It's no secret that Edmonton football fans bleed the green and gold of the Edmonton Eskimos. In the Canadian Football League, only Toronto has won more championships than Edmonton. And with such a long record of success, there are plenty of die-hard Eskimo fans in Edmonton. Edmonton's football franchise also boasts another record in the CFL. Their home turf of Commonwealth Stadium has the largest seating capacity of the entire CFL. In fact, Edmonton's Commonwealth Stadium has more than double the seating capacity of any Eastern Division team. Today, it's easy to associate Commonwealth Stadium with Edmonton's green and gold Eskimos. But if it weren't for a worldwide sporting event landing in Edmonton decades ago, we wouldn't have Commonwealth Stadium today. The global sporting event which focused the eyes of the world directly on our city, where athletes traveled from around the globe to compete in sporting dominance. Quite possibly Alberta's most high-profile sporting event ever. No, not that one. Get that out of here. Yeah. I'm talking about the 1978 Commonwealth Games, hosted in Edmonton, Alberta. Before Edmonton was selected to host what was, at that point, the upcoming 78 Games, Edmonton's football club played at a much smaller Clark Stadium. Clark Stadium is today known as Clark Field. Clark Field has a capacity of only 5,000, but back before it was rebuilt, it held a much more respectable capacity of 20,000 Eskimo fans. But if you go back even further, before both Commonwealth and Clark Stadiums, before the Edmonton Eskimos, that area was home to something a little less exciting and a lot more nefarious. The area where football fans cheer today was originally home to Alberta's first federal penitentiary. Built in 1906, inmates at the prison quickly found it was no picnic. At the time, prisoners were stripped of their names and were only addressed by number. Their heads were shaved and they were not entitled to speak or even move without express permission, and prison visitors were not permitted. But that wasn't the worst of it. Those serving time there were sentenced to hard labor. Inmates were put to work in construction and were expected to support themselves on the prison farm, tending to pigs, working crops, clearing brush. But those were the lucky ones. Prisoners were also put to work in the nearby coal mines. In Edmonton's early history, it was a coal town through and through. Edmonton's core was littered with coal mines on both sides of the river. It was the primary source of heat for almost all dwellings. And in a cold place like Edmonton, that is a lot of coal. So if the prisoners at Edmonton's Penitentiary wanted to stay warm over the harsh Canadian winters, they were expected, or rather forced, to work the coal mines. Being a resident of the federal prison was not a pleasant experience. But what's odd about the prison is, it didn't actually stay open for long. By the time World War I began, the prison had ceased operation. There are no records we could find to explain why a newly constructed federal prison ceased operation in less than 10 years. It has been noted, however, that they couldn't keep it full. It seems Edmontonians proved to be far too good to occupy a federal prison at the time.
Cigarette?
Yes, I know.
Well,
between the prison's closure and the construction of Clark Stadium over 20 years later, the site remained mainly unoccupied, save for one tenant. Big Four Moving and Storage. Can you think of a safer place to keep your stuff than an abandoned prison? Fast forward 40 years after Clark Stadium's construction, and it's 1978, and Edmonton is hosting the Commonwealth Games.
Great moments. There'll be more when CBC covers the Edmonton Commonwealth Games in August.
In preparation for the Games, Edmonton City Council debated whether or not to build a fancy new stadium. Clark Stadium was getting a little old, and its 20,000-person seating capacity seemed a little small for such a high-profile event. And while original plans called for the renovation of Clark Stadium, soon it was agreed that it would make more sense to build a brand new stadium. So, in the early 70s, construction began on Commonwealth Stadium. The stadium's capacity was 42,000 when it opened. That's about 13,000 less than today's capacity of 56,302. But at the time, it was still more than double that of Clark Stadium. While they had already settled the debate about building a new stadium, the most controversial decision was still yet to come. The Commonwealth Games would bring with them a visit by Her Royal Majesty the Queen of England, and as is tradition, the Queen placed a message in a baton. It was carried around the world by various athletes before finally arriving for the opening ceremonies in Edmonton. At the opening ceremonies, the Queen would retrieve the message from the baton and read it aloud. Organizers wanted to make sure that all expectations were met in regard to royal tradition. When hosting the Queen and her royal family, there were certain requirements you needed to look after. And that's when they discovered what would become a royal pain in the butt. It seems that the Queen is not to share a toilet with common folk. It is required that she has her own private accommodations. Now, you certainly don't have to agree with this requirement, but you can admit it wouldn't be that difficult to put in a simple private washroom somewhere in the stadium. But it wasn't quite as simple as that. Organizers, in a desperate attempt to do the right thing, went a little overboard. They spent $50,000 of public money to install a private restroom fit for a queen, and only available to her upon request. This was no simple water closet. It was reportedly carpeted, fully furnished, and decorated with frosted glass. It was truly a royal commode. Finally, the day of the opening ceremonies arrived, and the Queen's royal $50,000 private washroom went unused. Yep, it seems the Queen skipped her royal cup of English breakfast that morning because she never excused herself to go to the loo. Photos of the private washroom were never released, and not long after the games, the plumbing to the $50,000 loo was disconnected. The room itself wasn't maintained and eventually fell by the wayside. Over time, it became a storage room, housing some gas barbecues, lawn chairs, and miscellaneous Eskimos paraphernalia. Even though it was a private washroom, earmarked for Her Royal Majesty, it was later remembered that it in fact was used once by a 6-year-old boy. A 6-year-old boy whose father happened to be the Prime Minister of Canada at the time. A 6-year-old boy who himself eventually grew up to be Prime Minister. That's right, I'm talking about Canada's golden boy himself. A 6-year-old named Justin Trudeau. So, the next time you're cheering on your boys in green and gold, remember, those players are running and tackling on top of years of history, over the home of criminals and hard labor, and the home of the world's most expensive potty break, in Edmonton's own Commonwealth Stadium. Did you know about Edmonton's Penitentiary and Coal Town history? Do you think the Queen's washroom would have been worth it had she needed to go? Let us know in the comments below. Congratulations to Shannon, who won our $25 gift card. She won just for being a subscriber. Who knows when our next giveaway will be? If you want a chance to win in the future, or if you just like this video, subscribe now. You could be entered to win any of our future giveaways. And give us one of those thumbs up, and a share as well. These things really do help us out. And why not check out some of our other videos? Mostly about the greatest indoor show on earth, West Edmonton Mall. Oh, thanks for watching.